But again, seeing the motivations and the angles for one of the most central characters in the history of fighting games would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
And her father is like a huge reason for that, right? So I'm really excited to see that character. Hopefully they bring them in.
I'd like to see something built around these twin hatchets, and maybe she hits a little harder, has a little more life, but is more of a brawler type.
Having a female main villain who's really powerful and really well done would be awesome. We haven't seen that before. It's a great way to explore the franchise more.
And I would make her a grappling character. And not that she can grapple from full screen or anything like that with telekinesis, but maybe she uses the psycho power to do her SPDs. There's actually a lot of characters that pop up after they've been first introduced, like Colleen, like Zeku, who was in, I think, one of the alpha endings. There's a handful of them. Ed was in Street Fighter 4 in Balrog's endings, things like that. And so there are a lot of characters that a lot of the community has something of a relationship with and have something of expectation for, but widely they're unexplored, and they're very much unexplored. Like, they're sometimes placeholders for, or rather like just indicators of bigger stories that deal with the current characters. Usually they're related to the current characters in some ways. Anyways, this week I wanted to talk about 5 characters that have been in the Street Fighter story to some capacity, but have never been playable, that I think would be awesome as roster members for Street Fighter 6.
What makes them kind of awesome for you? Like, what makes them jump out, like, on the characters on this list?
Well, so it varies depending on the character, and I'll get into the particulars of each one and why. But like I said, for some of these characters, and I don't want to spoil them yet, but for some of these characters, we have an expectation a little bit, because they're connected to other characters that already exist in some ways, and so they're gonna echo these characters. Probably to a degree, but the expectations are not so great that you can't have a ton of freedom with them. And a lot of times, like the kind of characters that I'm talking about here, they have a certain status within the story. One such character that we could talk about is Gouken in Street Fighter 4. Like, we kind of knew roughly about Gouken. He was Ryu and Ken's master. The fact that he was Ryu and Ken's master immediately puts any Street Fighter fan at a certain level of like, oh, okay, that this character has some status all of a sudden. I don't know almost anything about him except for that he's Ryu and Ken's master. You are probably going to see some moves that look like the ones that Ryu and Ken do because of that. And so you can see there's some expectation, but maybe he throws his fireballs up. What? Maybe he uses one hand. Maybe his Tatsu goes directly up. Whatever. And that's actually a really good example of it. So Gouken, better than all those other ones I just listed. Gouken is that, like, you can have so much come out of this, and then if you do it right, maybe you have another mainstay character. And the fact that Street Fighter 6 looks like they're going to be doing some time travel stuff means that we can move around on this timeline. Not that Capcom has ever been restricted by anything. When they want to put a character in, they're going to put him in. Gouken, point in case, right? He's dead. We want to put him in. He's sleeping. There we go. Problem fixed. And I think we'd be okay with it. So let's get into it here. All right, and as we get started here, though, I want to first say, guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, please, if you haven't already, subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe, and give this a like because it helps out with algorithm stuff. You're the best. Oh, I'm sorry. Psycho crush the like button. I'm sorry. I break my own rules.
There it is.
The first of these 5 characters is Goutetsu, who happens to be the master of Akuma and Gouken. So all those things I just said about Gouken in relation to Ryu and Ken, you can apply those right on to Goutetsu. But this character is interesting. He was in what I think is probably the most epic of fights that have been in the Street Fighter universe. He was, of course, killed by Akuma out in the Field of Fate. And he was the only person in the world that was able to perform the Raging Demon without being consumed by the Satsui no Haru. Think about that for a second. You have a character that can do Demon, but whatever that means, he's not consumed by it. There's a different sort of a relationship with Demon, a different sort of outcome. There's so much coolness that just right there in that one iconic move, Capcom developers could take a take on. And then beyond that, he's got, again, you're going to see moves like Goken do, or like Goken and Akuma do, but he's going to have freedom to have his own take on it. Maybe he has that staff that we see in the Street Fighter V rendition. Maybe not. I don't care. I just think I want to play as the master of Akuma, the master of Goken. And I bring this up on almost every list of like this that I make. Like, I'd really like to see them explore Goutetsu. Do you feel that way, or am I kind of out
Oh
there?
yeah, no, these are epic characters. It's like seeing the origin story of Batman or Spider-Man, or like who are their masters, who are their who are the people who taught them and do all this kind of stuff. Like when you have these super iconic characters, exploring their history and how they kind of came to be is always just a great place to go. Gotetsu's very high up there on the characters I want to see again.
Yeah, and he strikes such like a fundamental chord with the whole idea of the student getting corrupted, coming back and killing the master. We see that kind of a thing happen all the time. But he's really cool. And yes, he was killed by Akuma, but maybe he, time travel. Maybe we go back to a time where he wasn't dead, or maybe moving around on the timeline opens up a portal in his time and he's summoned and he comes through it to fight in wherever time we're at for Street Fighter 6. Or maybe he was just sleeping. I don't care. But Gotetsu, man, I want to see what a Tatsu looks like. I want to see what his DP. Maybe he throws one-handed fireballs, but they're Akuma's color or something like that. I don't know, like the purple. But you could do so much, and it's strangely familiar for all of us that have already been very submersed in the Street Fighter lore and culture and such. It's like, oh, we can see, and yeah, there's that little nostalgia, or there's little like, oh, that's what that little trail of breadcrumbs was. It's an opportunity to flesh out a really cool character from the lore that we've never seen before. Number 2 on the list, Go Hibiki, Dan's father. So here's interesting, because Dan is a joke character, right? And his movements, beautifully animated, especially in Street Fighter V, are not pristine, not crisp. One of his throws, which I love it. It looks like he takes the momentum that he's trying to throw his opponent with, and then he at the last minute goes the other way and trips them over his foot. I mean, he throws them, sure, but it just looks so awkward and wrong, and the way he ties his belt is kind of goofy. And so his father, Go Hibiki, was also a master martial artist, but he was legit, and so we could see an echo of Dan that actually has a crispness and a strong execution to his moves. How cool would that be, right? Like, can you imagine?
Yeah, that it would be a good version of Dan, and you'd want the bad version of Dan just for the juxtaposition there, like to have fun with. But like a good version of Dan would actually be really epic. And I mean, again, he took Sagat's eye, right? Like
Yes.
this is not just a minor character. This is a character actually who has some relevance in the storyline. So
Absolutely.
cool.
And that's my next point there. Thank you so much. Is that he could have a really cool relationship with Sagat, because he is the one that plucks Sagat's eye out. So, first of all, some of his attacks could probably be something along the lines of, like a striking or a plucking. I think of Kill Bill.
Kill Bill,
And
yeah.
and like the 5-point heart explosion technique, or the very fact that somebody in that I won't give too much spoilers, but there is some eye pluckage techniques in that movie, or in those movies. And also, Go Hibiki, you should give him a Paime alternate costume. I was thinking about this because he's sort of that figure in a sense. So is Gotetsu, for that matter. But he could have an interesting relationship with Sagat, because depending on how they want to go about it, Sagat did what he did to Go when he was motivated by immaturity and pride and wanting to be the best, and was willing to go through these murderous pathways to get what he wanted. And he would soon realize over his fights with Ryu and dealing with the Satsui no Hado and such, that this isn't the person he wants to be. If Go Hibiki, via time travel or whatever, wakes up or and interacts with a modern Sagat, the guy that he murdered, what would that look like? Maybe they team up, maybe they fight again, maybe they fight without the idea of, like, because everything is a fight in Street Fighter, maybe they fight with, I don't want to kill you, but we want to fight because we want to achieve some sense of balance, whatever. They could be cool rivals, and maybe even cooler partners if they bring Go Hibiki into the fold.
Yeah, it reminds me of my friend was explaining the Pokemon games to me, and he's like, "Well, it's like Street Fighter where they
Pokemon
fight
Go,
for no reason
Hibiki.
whatsoever." Yeah,
10
not Pokemon
points.
Go, but they're like, "I don't like the color of your shoes. Let's fight about it," kind of
Yes.
thing. That's pretty much the reasons you need to fight in this game, right? So it is nice to have better reasons, but also like if we want to see a battle, it's like that's fine. It's like just make an excuse and throw them in there, and then boom, here we go.
Boom, here we go. So now we got to get some female representation. I hear you. I hear you. And look, the Bison dolls come up quite often, and we've talked about how tired this idea is of, yes, just more characters that were either, processed in some way, developed by Bison to be who they are now, or just exist as clone bodies that are very capable because, they're potential bodies for Bison to go into. But only, I think, 4 of the Bison dolls, not including Cammy, have been playable. I went through the other ones, and you could make an argument for any of them, really. But Noembelu, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I want to say Noembelu, but November, the November
November,
doll.
yeah,
Yeah, we just call her November.
yeah. Call it November. It's fine.
She is Native American, and now don't she's not Julie, who is the Native American character doll from T-Hawk's tribe that T-Hawk is actually looking for in part of his stories. It was actually going to be November, but they changed it kind of last minute to Julie. But she is also a Native American who uses these badass tomahawks, and she's also the greatest. She's got the greatest physical strength of any of the dolls. So what I would like to see from her maybe is not your traditional super quick, super fast paced doll. Like I'm kind of tired of that. I'd like to see something built around these twin hatchets, and maybe she hits a little harder, has a little more life, and is more of a brawler type. Because I think the big thing with the dolls too is that we think of, the zippiness of Cammy or DeCapri, and we go, yeah, we've got that already probably with Cammy. We don't need it again. Make her not like that. Make her tough and make her use these. And maybe she can use the axes or the tomahawks in a special way. Maybe she can throw them and not and have to pick them up, a la Vega's Mask or Claw, something like that. If she chooses to throw them, use that move. There's a lot of cool stuff you could do with them. And I would
Yeah,
also
make them like a boomerang, even like Monot's sphere,
could
kind
be.
of thing. Like you throw it and then recall it and stuff like that. But these would automatically come back. It's generally been a pretty cool gameplay mechanic when you see it done right. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to this games and a whole new layer of like style and interest and stuff. So I can't think of too many boomerang attacks that are special moves. Like Ibuki has one as a V trigger, but in terms of like a special move and that being a whole basis of the character, you don't see it very often in these games. Monot's the closest one.
Yeah, maybe, I don't want to get into the particulars of how you would balance it, but maybe they're pretty powerful when she's holding them, or they're pretty powerful to throw, but if she throws them, she has to retrieve them, and something along those lines. That'd be hard to balance, but it's something to explore. But what I would also say in this idea of kind of getting away from the broad doll idea is that make her post doll, like have her have come out of the whole hold on Bison, and you can give her a nostalgia costume where she has like the doll suit and whatever, but don't make her a Bison doll primarily. She used to be one, but she has her own identity and has broken away from it. That's what I would do with this particular character.
It's funny to me in the Street Fighter universe how some characters are allowed to use weapons and others aren't. Like
Yeah.
like Sodom actually uses 2 freaking like katana blades and stuff like that, like it is X's and Forum, and it's like, how's that fair, kind of thing. And what is it? Striker in
His
Mortal
size,
Kombat gets to
yeah.
use a gun.
Yeah, and his nightstick and grenades.
So it's
There's
it's a great
there's a doll that
stuff.
has 2 little submachine guns. I think you fight
Yeah,
her in the
yeah.
story mode too. They
Yeah, it's
animated those
perfect. There's
moves.
one with a katana and everything. So it's like, yeah, it's like have fun. One fights with a laptop. It's like, yeah,
Oh
have
yeah.
fun with it. It's really about the whole. It's a vehicle to get there. Logic mostly need not apply. So
All right, so number 4 on the list is Dorai, Chun-Li's father. We've heard about Chun-Li's father and fodder quite a bit over the years because he
he's
has
kind of
been
foddery now. But
yeah, yeah.
10 points.
Is Rashid gonna come out and say
Cut
10
to
points for
end with that one right there. We done it. There's nothing better that can be said during this podcast now.
that
You win pun
one?
of the day. No, so Chun-Li's father, of course, he was murdered by Bison, and that's Chun-Li's motivation. When I was looking back into his story, and by the way, these stories are kind of loose, and so I look at them as like, well, anything cool that has been said that has kind of made it, whether it's been said by, like Udon, or if it's in one of the old games or whatever, it's like we're not holding fast to all of the particulars. So there are different interpretations. Sometimes he looks more like Mike Hagger. Sometimes he's just like, well, you'll see some of the images here that they're different and such. But a lot of the idea behind Chun-Li's father, Dorai, is that he was a high level Hong Kong police officer. So Chun-Li very much followed in his footsteps. And in I think it's the Street Fighter anime series, there's a flashback where you see him fighting in the village, and you see him do the spinning bird kick. And there's also a strong connection between him and Gen, who also plays a role in Chun-Li's story and upbringing and such, or development, I should say. And let's see. This is a quote here from some of my research. Dorai trained his daughter Chun-Li in martial arts from an early age and passed down the move Genden Assassination Kick that he learned from Gen. And this is, I believe, the sweep that we see Chun-Li do in Street Fighter 3, where she kind of goes on one hand and uses both kicks or both feet to kick at the same time. That apparently was from Gen, but her father taught her that move. So the idea here is that he could have moves that are certainly going to echo Chun-Li. Maybe he does spinning bird kick. Maybe he has his own take on the spinning bird kick. Or maybe he does the equivalent with his hands. I don't really care. The thing is, you could do a lot of like, shades of Chun-Li, but in his own character, with his own themes, with his own effectiveness and own strategies. And then, hey, we could have Chun-Li versus Bison, or Chun-Li's father versus Bison at some point if Bison makes it into the game. But I think that with as much as Dorai has been referenced, it feels like we kind of know him, and he would be completely valid as a character to be brought in, especially given that he was a very active martial artist, a crime fighter. He is Chun-Li in certain ways as far as, a fighting character. He totally has a place on a Street Fighter roster, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's he's very similar to the argument, that Ryu and Ken, it's people love a certain moveset. Chun-Li's moveset is beloved by a lot of people. Bringing in a character who has a different moveset than Chun-Li but echoes her in a lot of ways would be wonderful. Chun-Li is one of the most popular fighting game characters ever. So, having another character like that would be pretty cool. There should be a lot of fun stuff they could do with that. Especially, I mean, again, and the big thing I kind of go about this, and I know plot Street Fighter, but it's like we've heard about this for a long time. But again, seeing the motivations and the angles for one of the most central characters in the history of fighting games would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
And her father is like a huge reason for that, right? So I'm really excited to see that character. Hopefully they bring them in. Just a lot they could do there, and hopefully they don't Nicoli him up and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, we've got all these great plans," and we just kind of threw everything at the screen and said, "That's good enough." So,
He really is so referenced though. Like there's even in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, if you play as Tekken's Lei Wulong against Chun-Li, I wasn't able to find the screen itself, but the quote he talks about when I think when he beats Chun is he talks about how some of the legendary techniques that were taught in the Hong Kong International Police Department come from Chun-Li's father, and how he is the legend, or she is the legendary daughter of this character. It's like his influence is so strong that it has hit the Tekken crowd, So like I said, again, he definitely has a place in a Street Fighter roster. And then the final character here is the least defined by far of all of them. And actually, I didn't even realize that this was it's not even a specific character, because M. Bison's history is very clouded. Like we know what happens with him a decent bit once the events of Street Fighter begin, but his backstory before that is shrouded in a ton of mystery. And all we know is that he was learning under his master. He did the old like, oh yeah, rise up, kill my master. Absolutely. But he was being taught psycho power by this master figure, and he had two other peers that were being taught, and they were the only ones on the planet being taught the ways of psycho power. Now, Bison infuses psycho power into other characters, of course, and they get certain abilities as a result. But I dare venture to guess that if you learn psycho power like he did, it's a different thing than just being, have it, jacked into your, neck matrix style or something like that. So the idea of one of Bison's peers resurfacing would be super cool because it's the one character that would have some kind of a connection to Bison way back in the day. Again, probably some similar stuff to Bison, but could absolutely be their own character. How do they use the psycho power? Is it matter of fact corruption? Maybe it is because it thrives off of chaos and such. But maybe this isn't just necessarily like a aligned to the evil side. It's just a chaotic character that doesn't care whether you're good or bad, just whatever. You could do whatever you want and would have some secrets about Bison and would know some, I don't know, some weaknesses or maybe teams up for a time. Who knows? But I think that this character is jam packed with potential and has virtually no identity beyond it. So I was thinking, well, first of all, do you have any reactions to that before I go
Oh
in? Because
yeah,
I have a
tons
particular
of it.
like what I would do with this character, but I'll jump into that after this.
Yeah, well, hopefully I don't jump on that. But the thing they're trying to destroy the psycho power now at this point, right? Bison's dead, but the psycho power is still there. And am I hitting your point
No,
there?
this is good though.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's kind of like it unfortunately goes back to Star Wars where, no one's ever really gone. And, so Bison, his essence is still there and they've got to wipe out the psycho power. So going back in time and figuring out how psycho power, originated and all this other kind of crap so they could basically find it out and destroy it once and for all, which actually has to happen at some point because Chun-Li has to take down Shadaloo. All this other kind of stuff kind of has to happen. And, maybe psycho powers obliterated or at least mitigated to some degree where it's not that much of a presence anymore. Like all that kind of stuff has to come to pass. So that would be a cool way of exploring it by, how do you solve the future? You go back to the past.
Yeah.
So.
So I think that's really cool. That would be an awesome way of plugging this character into the story and making them actually very relevant and maybe integral to the whole thing. Like Bison's gone, but we got to go out to that cabin in the middle of nowhere in the woods where there's that last remaining psycho power character, or whatever. Be really neat. But I would make this character a female. And I was thinking, you can be pretty liberal with how you would want the psycho power to act, because some characters get teleports, some characters can infuse it, some characters can manifest it in their own whatever. I'm thinking this character would be a female and she would be not overly buff because when Luke was, or not Luke, I'm sorry, Ed was first revealed, he was like the really thin character, and I thought, oh, it's gonna be really cool because he's gonna use psycho power, and that's gonna make up for his like he's kind of lanky and thin, and like not gonna be able to trade punches with a character like Balrog or anyone else in the Street Fighter roster, right? But he uses this power to kind of close that gap. She could still be just like an average thin, like not super roided out Street Fighter character, but uses psycho power, and I would make her a grappling character. And not that she can grapple from full screen or anything like that with telekinesis, but maybe she uses the psycho power to do her SBDs, right? Something like that. And Seth has an SBD in Street Fighter 4 where he uppercuts you and then he teleports up and grabs you and SBDs down. It's one of the coolest takes on an SBD ever. You could do things like that, where she manifests some kind of like a tentacle, like a psycho power tentacle that picks you up and then slams you down. Things like that. I just think that that's the type of character that you don't expect a grappler to look like that, to function that way, and I think it could be kind of a fresh take on a couple of existing sort of themes or ideas with characters. But I mean, the door is wide open. It's just Bison's peer, use a psycho power, go for it. Whatever you want to do, I think there's a lot of potential in that.
Well, you look at the history of villains in Street Fighter, and they've been basically all male. So you got Bison, you got Sagat, you got Nikali for like 2 seconds until they replaced him with G. Then you got Seth, who is a robot, kind of like both things, but still mostly male voice and all that kind of stuff, male appearing, right? Shouts to the boob outline, Machin Tenshin always mentions, and then Gil. It's a bunch of males. So having a female main villain who's really powerful and really well done would be awesome. We haven't seen that before. It's a great way to explore the franchise more.
Absolutely. And that's all I had to say about that.